Florida. Listen, I get it. I absolutely get it. I get the frustration of waking up on Saturday morning and realizing that your team captain is now on his way to the Florida Panthers, the team that basically destroyed your dream season, beat you last year, concussed Marchand along the way. I understand the natural frustration that comes with that, right? I also do think that they should have got more.
Just going to say, I was on the morning show yesterday to talk about the trade deadline, and we talked about some of the players that might be on the move, and listen, Marchand's name came up, and Coyle's name came up, and Carlo's name came up, and I thought that there was a possibility that maybe one of those guys might go somewhere else. I don't think I expected this level of change this quickly. I do credit Don Sweeney. That's from his comments a couple of weeks ago. He made it clear that the organization wasn't in the place that he thought that they needed to be, and there was going to need to be some changes made in order to expedite their recovery. And he did what he felt needed to be done yesterday, and that. I heard you at the beginning. I like a lot of people. I'm shocked not only that Marchand's not here, but that he's going to be a Florida Panther. It stings, but if ultimately that was the best deal that they could get, then that's what they have to do.
Yeah, I think going back to the Marchand trade, do you think that the injury limited perhaps not the amount of interest, because I think everyone would want a 36-year-old guy with the 40th most points in playoff history. But do you think the injury limited the interest and the ability to maximize the return potentially for the Bruins?
It had to have. I mean, because Marchand's too good of a player still, even at his age, and can have too big of an impact both on the ice and in the locker room. For him not to be worth more than a second-round pick. Maybe it's a first-round pick depending on his health, but I think that it clearly entered into it. It had to have. And the fact that it has now come out that the Bruins kind of expected him to be out another few weeks, maybe right up until the playoffs start. And I mean, so clearly Florida was concerned about that as well because of the way that they structured the deal and having to have Marchand healthy and them advance in the playoffs for that pick to convey to a number one, I think, shows that they're not 100% certain of when he's going to be back. And so, if that's the case, if Florida thought that way and the Bruins thought that way, then I'm sure the rest of the league was thinking that way. And, if you're a team like Florida and you've already got one cup and you're going for another one, maybe you can afford to take that swing. But if you're another team that's not at that level, you can't give away resources for something that's not going to be more of a sure thing. And that's, I think, if I was a team like LA, where, I'm not at the top echelon right now, I'm a contender, but I'm not there yet. I'm not going to willingly mortgage part of my future for a guy that may or may not be there when we need him.
Yeah. And I think it's important that we acknowledge sort of both sides of the fence, so to speak, that if the Bruins hung on to Marchand, and the Bruins have lost 8 of 9 games, right? They're not going to make the playoffs, and we don't see him again, or we see him on April whatever against the New Jersey Devils with nothing to play for, and then that bridge between the teams remain, in terms of getting a contract done. We'd be sitting here on the season wrap-up show going, why did they keep him? Why didn't they get something for him? So I think it's important that we acknowledge that, right? Like, we can be pissed about the return, but we also have to acknowledge that a second-round pick for a guy who's injured and wasn't close on a contract, like, that's still a win, as much as it may be hard to swallow. Listen, I don't love spicy food, but I eat it sometimes. That's kind of what it feels like with this kind of trade.
Yeah, and we'll see what ends up happening with the contract come the off season. Whether he stays in Florida, goes somewhere else. I know there's people who are hoping that he'll end up back in Boston somehow still, but. I look at what's been reported, and, John Butchergross from ESPN is saying that the Bruins offered 2 years at $3 million per, and that Marchand wanted 3 years, apparently. And, if he was going to take 2, that he wanted more money than $3 million per year. I would find it difficult to imagine that at his age, anybody's going to offer him a 3-year contract. And so, if that's where they were contract-wise and the Bruins had dug in and he had dug in, I don't think you were going to get into a position. I don't think the Bruins would allow themselves to get into a position where he was just going to walk away and they'd get nothing for him at the end of this year. And that wouldn't have made a whole lot of sense. And so, the fact that they didn't get anything done from the start of training camp all the way until now, it just didn't seem like it was going to work out. And, if that's the case, you can't let a guy of Brad Marchand's caliber go when you could get a valuable asset for him.
I get it. Not what you had in mind when you thought about trading Brad Marchand. That injury, man. It lingered. I at the end of the day, I'm happy they made a decision. If we took to that press conference yesterday and Don Sweeney was going, yeah, we didn't do anything with him, but we're still hopeful we can get a deal done. It's like, okay, well, we've been here before. We know how this tends to go. You tend to move on from those guys more often than not. Joining us now, though, on the expert hotline here, live from Tampa, Bob Beers. Bob, how are we doing today?
I'm good, Ty. How are we doing?
What an absolute whirlwind day. I can only imagine what it was like being down there as well. I know Marchand was injured, not around the team, but yesterday when that day happens, did you see the chaos that was going to follow? Like, did you see that one coming? But post practice to 3 p.m.
I wasn't surprised at any of the trades in terms of guys that left the team. I really wasn't. I think everybody was on the table except for maybe a few, right? Very few. If you want to say Pastrnak and McAvoy and probably Swayman. I think everybody else was on the table to go. Still trying to wrap my head around everything that kind of went on yesterday. There was a lot, obviously, and still trying to wrap my head around, who they got in return and is it enough and did we do okay? And, that's still to be determined.
What specifically surprised you about those trades when you say you were surprised by them?
Marshy, did they get enough? Here's where I'm at, Ty. Like, his injury, and he probably dictated a little bit about where he was going to go, but I can't believe that we did a deal with the Panthers. It's like dealing with the Canadians, right? We never trade with the Canadians. Now we're dealing with the Panthers. Oh, that kills me. Toronto's one thing because we've beaten them every year, with Carlo going there, but so I can deal with Toronto because we've beaten them, but Florida. That one's tough. That was hard for me to take.
And I've always been a fan of keeping those things separated as well. Like, I remember for years, I want to say the Bruins and Buffalo didn't trade, and then they had the Danny Paille trade, and now they've made I think 4 or 5 trades since. But
Taylor Hall and sure.
But for a while there, I think that Paille trade.
And now
we
have the Yoki Haru.
Yeah, exactly. So I like when rivals are like, no, we're not dealing with you. So that is a bummer to lose that. And when you look at these trades and the way they're kind of resetting the deck here, what is something that maybe stands out with the guys that they have added and the flexibility they've created? Like, do you see anything within these players and within maybe what they moved out that they're trying to get away from, or they want to get more of this or that? In the next 2 years. I know it's a hard thing to try to.
I'm not sure.
No, it's hard.
Sure. The guy they got from Toronto, what's his last name? Minton. Yeah. So leadership is supposed to be very good. Can he play? I don't know. I mean, none of us have seen him except for the World Juniors, right? Mm-hmm. Watch him play a little bit there, but that's not NHL. So is he ready for the NHL? Can he play in the NHL? What do they do with the draft picks that they get for Carlo and Coyle and Marshy? That's going to be the big one. Are they going to draft well? And is this something that's going to help them in the future? Here's really what I'm concerned about, Ty, and because being around these guys all the time and seeing it. So when you have your captain is Brad Marchand and your assistants are McAvoy and Pastrnak. So McAvoy's out, Marchand's out. Who are the assistants? Well, it's Carlo and Coyle. Who'd you just trade?
Yeah.
Leadership to me is that room there's a big void there right now because I mean McAvoy's not playing. Passa's your only true kind of leader. That room to me just got really empty. So that's going to be a big one for me moving forward. You know, who are your leaders? How's this team going to, you know, Bergeron, we've been so insulated for so long, whether it was Chara, but especially Bergeron. You know, he just commanded the room. And so did Z. But now that's gone. All of it's gone. And who's going to command the room? And that's to me, that's a big one moving forward.